Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And I am Jim Waters, welcoming you to this Tuesday edition of Kentucky's Voice, where we're streaming live on the radio and on major social media platforms, as we are each weekday, 11 a.m. to noon. And then you can watch us on TV at 12:30, 4 and 8 o'clock today on Channel 21 WBNA, right here in the greater Louisville area. We hope you'll take a moment to catch that. Or if you missed the live version online, just check it out on YouTube, and we'll have it up right after the show today. Kentucky's Voice. What is it, you say? Well, it offers coverage and analysis of today's news from a conservative, common sense, Christian-based point of view. We are not inhibited in saying that. We are not afraid to say that. We are very clear about what we are. And you can partner with us here in a couple of important ways. We welcome your comments and your contributions. You can text your comments to 502-571-0970. And you can text KY Voice to 53555 in order to make a one-time or monthly contribution. This is a listener-supported outreach and ministry and part of the Word Media Group here, and we're glad to have you along with us. Folks, we have a unique opportunity here to build a media powerhouse that's really needed here in Kentucky. After all, what other media outlet do you know of in our community that will always consistently be reporting, analyzing, opining from a conservative Christian common sense point of view? And maybe you might not think that's needed right now or that important right now, but you'll think differently about it, I think, before it's over. Conservatives, tend to wait until things turn left before acting. Right now, conservative populism is on the rise with the success of the Trump administration and all of the impact that he's had. But there's going to come a time, and in our state, we have a supermajority Republicans. Indiana has a supermajority of Republicans. But there may come a time when the pendulum will swing the other way. And when that happens, what you do today, what you give today, what you invest today will make it possible to have this strong conservative voice that cannot be silenced by an Andy Beshear executive order. And everybody said, thank God for that. So I invite you to partner with us today. An entirely listener-supported show. It's very simple. Text KY Voice to 53555. Also, text us about your thoughts on the show or any of the issues we discuss at 502-571-0970. Coming up on the show today, we have a very special guest joining us. We'll tell you about him in just a few minutes. But let's take a look at some of the developments in the news. Fallout continues from the NFL's decision to feature radical leftist Bad Bunny during the halftime show of Sunday's Super Bowl. Bad Bunny has trashed President Trump's tough immigration policies, and ICE heroes struts around in drag, pushing the LGBTQ agenda down our throats, refuses to tour here, fearing his fans might face rightful deportation, and belts out mostly Spanish songs that feel like a slap in the face to our English-speaking patriotic traditions. Also, what was up with having an on-stage wedding during the halftime of the Super Bowl? This was evidenced by the fact that 5 million Americans boycotted Roger Goodell's divisive halftime show. I guess what I'm saying is evidence that this was divisive. 5 million Americans boycotted the show and instead watched Turning Point USA's alternative show with Kid Rock and other shows as well, other bands as well on that show. That's a statement. The more and more people are getting fed up with stars forcing their political beliefs on their former on Americans and on their fellow Americans. The NFL's decision to bring in Bad Bunny for the halftime show was disruptive, divisive, and most of all, unnecessary. Why not bring in a unifying star, a true star, not one that 75% of the people hadn't heard of, or not someone that would divide the country, but someone that would bring the country together and who is actually a great musician. Having said that, I must say, the Seattle Seahawks defense proved once again that defense wins championships. Coming up, we'll talk more about the Super Bowl, and also Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie continues to lead the fight to hold even the Trump administration officials accountable for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Don't go away. Stay tuned on Kentucky's Voice. Thanks for joining us.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Well, speaking of the Super Bowl, California's greed socks Super Bowl stars. Winners pay more in taxes than they earn in bonuses. Classic blue state overreach. Quarterback Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks celebrating their Super Bowl victory, but California's infamous jock tax turns that bonus into a bust. Get this, non-resident athletes get taxed on income prorated by duty days spent in the state for games, practices, and prep, about 8 to 10 days for the big game. This means that winners pocket a $178,000 bonus, but with California's sky-high 14.6% top rate, Darnold's estimated bill, $249,000, meaning a net loss of $71,000 even after the win. He has to pay to win the Super Bowl in California. That's how high and out of control their tax policies are. Losers get $103,000, but still face some pretty hefty hits out there. This tax grab is millions from pros annually, spotlighting California's burdensome regulations on out-of-staters, while liberal policies drive up costs and drive out residents and businesses. In the same way, athletes might also think twice about playing in games in the Golden State in the future and insist on playing in low-tax havens like Florida or Texas. Well, Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie continues to lead the fight to hold even Trump administration officials accountable for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, the financier accused of sex trafficking minors. Massie now calling on Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to resign outright, saying there's no reason for him to appear before Congress, given his documented ties to the convicted sex offender. The Kentucky Republican told CNN that Lutnick stepping down would be the cleanest option, especially as new Epstein-related files continue to surface. Those records show business dealings between Lutnick and Epstein years after Epstein's 2008 conviction, directly contradicting Lutnick's claim that he cut back ties in 2005. While the Commerce Department has attempted to minimize the revelation, saying Lutnick's interactions were limited, often with his wife present, and stressing he's never been accused of wrongdoing, Massie argues the standard should be higher for a senior cabinet official. Who's going to argue with that? Thomas Massie compared the situation to recent developments in Great Britain, where high-profile figures resigned over far less extensive Epstein connections, and noted that Prince Andrew lost his royal titles over alleged involvement. He said that if this were the UK, Lutnick would already be gone, adding that resigning would spare President Trump further political fallout. Meanwhile, because of Massie and a Democratic colleague, Congress now will apparently have access to unredacted Epstein files starting this week, ensuring the issue is unlikely to fade anytime soon. Well, speaking of Congressman Massey, the 4th District Congressman from Kentucky, there's been a lot of fallout on social media about what happened at a Friday night meeting of the Oldham County Republican Party when Massey had the microphone taken away as he attempted to speak, an incident that has quickly become a flashpoint among grassroots conservatives. Witnesses say Massey was cut off mid-remarks by his party's leadership, prompting audible frustration from some in the audience. The episode has fueled criticism that establishment figures are being protected while dissenting or independent-minded conservatives are being sidelined. Now, Massey apparently went over the time allotted to him and his Trump-picked primary challenger in the race, Ed Gallrain. As a result, David Osborne, the House Speaker, who's also a resident of Oldham County and who apparently was leading this meeting, took the mic away from Massey. Let's see that clip.
Rubber stamp. If you want a rubber stamp, you can vote for my opponent. If you want somebody who makes up their own mind and does things for you, the chain of command does not go to the commander-in-chief when you are a congressman. You work not for the Speaker of the House. I vote for you.
Well, supporters of Massey argue the move was disrespectful and emblematic of a double standard within the party. Several attendees and activists noted that longtime GOP power brokers are rarely, if ever, treated the same way. I thought this was a good point. One recurring comparison was to Senator Mitch McConnell, with critics saying no one would have dared interrupt the senior senator under similar circumstances. The moment has since circulated online, amplifying complaints about party leadership shutting down voices they find uncomfortable or inconvenient. That video, by the way, has been viewed by more than 100,000 viewers on Facebook. Social media reaction swift and heated. Again, comments included, if that had been Mitch McConnell, he could have talked for 20 minutes and nobody would have stopped him. And this is what happens when you challenge the establishment, your mic gets cut. Others wrote Massey represents the voters, not the party bosses. And Oldham County GOP just showed exactly why grassroots conservatives are fed up. The incident is now being cited by Massey's supporters as further proof of a growing rift between Republican leadership and the party's base, even here in our state. Now, let me say this. I've spoken at these types of events, many of them, and I always get my comments into the time allotted. It's usually limited. So what you have to do is you have to determine that the things that are most important that I think I need to say and make sure I say, get those things in early at the beginning or near the beginning. And having said that, the parties are usually flexible with the time. But let's face it, Massey's not going to get a break from these establishment insiders who would just as soon see Massey go home to his farm in Lewis County and develop some more patents or whatever. You know, he's known for that as well. But I guess another point that this brings up to me is just because they call themselves Republicans doesn't mean they really want someone up there in Washington fighting against big spending and big government if it's a Republican in power or a Republican administration. And I think that's where the term rhino comes in. Republicans in name only. How do I know this? Because of comments made by party establishment types. For example, I saw comments by local Republican officials in Oldham County, including one by a top official calling Thomas Massey a vulgar and unflattering name after this incident got picked up on social media. And by the way, our thanks to Michael Ferris for recording that incident. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had it. But this name was very vulgar, starts with an A, ends with an E, total 7 letters. I saw the same term used by others who are supposed to be leaders as well. It would be good for these folks to remember something former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said. If they attack you personally, it means they have not a single political argument left. Or put another way, name calling in a political debate is a sure sign that the attacker has run out of ideas. I think that's right. But one publication that certainly hasn't run out of ideas when it comes to communism in China is the Epoch Times. I wanted to take a moment and share about a recent piece in the Times. And this one is actually a letter to the editor about newly elected New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. And it's from Philip Grigo in California, who writes, Newly elected NYC Mayor Mamdani received enthusiastic cheers to his pronouncement that he will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. Doesn't that make you feel warm all over? Well, his acolytes must have been born yesterday, says Mr. Grigo. They have no idea how warm and fuzzy collectivism has been. For example, the Great Chinese Famine of 1958 to 1962, Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward, and agricultural collectivization and rapid industrialization controlled by the CCP. You know that is, the Chinese Communist Party. That warm and friendly experiment led to a catastrophic famine and an estimated 15 to 20 million deaths. Yes, warm collectivism indeed. How about the Soviet famine and Holodomor, 1930 to 1933, in which Stalin's forced collectivization of agriculture led to widespread starvation? The famine in Ukraine, that's the Holodomor, is considered by many scholars to be a deliberate genocide targeted at the Ukrainian peasants and their national elites and leaders, resulting in an estimated 3.9 million deaths. So if you thought attacks on Ukraine were recent history, you're wrong about that. And then what about the Khmer Rouge regime, 1975 to 1979, the radical communist regime in Cambodia under Pol Pot, which pursued anti-urban collectivist policies, wrote Mr. Grigo, that led to the deaths of 2 million people through execution, starvation, and forced labor. And then he ends, I feel bad for the people of good faith in New York City. I wish I could help them, but I can't. That's from the Epic Times. The Times also had a column about how the Chinese Communist Party, interestingly enough, is entering a period of decline and on the verge of collapsing, which we may or may not get to today, but you should check it out. Also later in the show, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear was on The View on Monday. We'll break down what he had to say later in the show. Many of those points we will be repeating we have said before. But first, coming up next, former youth pastor, advertising executive, candidate for U.S. Congress who grew his hair, grew his beard, and became an expert in barn and log cabin construction, becomes a historical restorationist of Civil War era cabins and barns. This is an interesting story, folks. You don't want to miss this. He's written a book about it, and he can help you with your restoration project as well. Stay with us for our guest, Mike Oldman Bailey. That's Old Man. He told me to say that, so I say that. Mike Oldman Bailey. Coming up on our next segment, we want to hear from you today, 502-571-0970. If you have a comment, question, opinion about what we're talking about today or anything on your mind, let us know. Let us know you're listening. 502-571-0970. More of Kentucky's Voice and our special guest, Mike Oldman Bailey, next. Don't go away.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
And we want to hear from you today, 502-571-0970. We'll get to your text. That's our Kentucky's Voice text line. You can text us on that. You don't even have to talk on the radio to tell us. You just the amazing wonders of technology that we can get your message and get it on the air. And you can do that, 502-571-0970. You can also partner with us with a once or a once monthly gift by texting KY Voice to 53555 and check us out online at kyvoice.org. This is Kentucky's Voice. Nice to have you with us today, and I'm so delighted to have our special guest with us today. We'll say Mike, but it's Old Man Bailey. And that's your. And get right up there on that mic. That's your title. That's what you said. So
well, people think I'm too young to be Old Man Bailey, but I say I'll grow into the job.
Well, now your wife had something to say too. She wasn't.
Oh yeah, she didn't want to be called Old Woman Bailey, and don't call her that.
Okay. Well, anyhow, it's a delight to have you here with us. I think you're one of the most interesting guests that we've had here on Kentucky's Voice, at least since we've been doing the TV show here, this part of it, and at least the shows I've hosted. You came across the river from southern Indiana today to be with us on this show, and you're near Corydon, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, we cover all this area here on Kentucky's Voice, 27 counties, including Harrison County and all the counties in southern Indiana there along the river. And so you've got friends and neighbors listening, so no pressure or anything. Just kidding. But, you've had some specific chapters in your life. I think that's a good way to describe this because the chapters are all part of the same book, but they look very different, indeed. And one chapter to the next. How does a Hoosier like you go from being a youth pastor and an advertising executive to being a bearded, long-haired master cabin builder specializing in the field of 1800s Civil War era barn restoration?
That was
a long question.
And it's a long story, but I'll give you segments. Of course, restoring barns and cabins and teaching people how to live in them from the 1800s is just fun. But I had no life trajectory to take me to that place.
So when you were growing up in your early, was this something you were out in the wood shop, or you had an interest in this, or was this something that developed?
Oh no,
all of a sudden, or
no? I was a typical city guy who grew up in Chicago and who knew nothing. Even when I ran my ad agency, I drove a BMW, wore a suit and tie to work, and the idea of building anything was about as remote to me as you could possibly imagine.
So we're going to get to that, but what age did this happen? When did this happen?
At 38 years old, I got mad that I was stupid when it came to working with my hands. And by that time, the Lord had given us 6-7 children, and we wanted to teach our children a work ethic, but I couldn't teach them how to work with their hands. So my wife Lori and I decided to move to the country. So we bought 82 acres in southern Harrison County, turned the barn into our home. And our prayer was, and this will describe it to people who especially can identify with being dumb, working with your hands. Every morning we prayed, Lord, send your angels or we're going to die today. The second thing we prayed is
he likes those kind of prayers. Those are desperate prayers.
And the second one, equally important, was we need skills way beyond our pay grade. And as Christians, we often think that the Lord just provides moral, character, spiritual truth to our life, but He can give gifts we don't have. He can give skills, intelligence that we lack.
Well, and Jesus in His ministry often began with the natural. to teach the spiritual. You know, he often he talked about the fields and the farms and in his parables, and used that to teach the ground, the soil, and on. Building, building on a solid foundation, building on a foundation on sand, and what would happen. So there's really great spiritual precedent for that. So why 1800s, and how did you get how did you decide what kind of that time period?
Well,
what
during
made
that time, I was still running my advertising agency, running for 4 races for the U.S. Congress, helping other candidates run for office. But when we moved to the country, and we had a Civil War barn on our property, that was it. We turned that into our house, and it radically changed my life. And I learned a lot.
So that's a question too. Is a lot of people now that say, "Well, I can go to Google and figure anything out," but this wasn't what you did.
No.
So how did you do it?
I didn't even read books on it.
So you just did it.
No. Well, the first thing was the prayer. The second thing was I would have tradesmen come in and do work for me, but their job was to teach me not to do...
So they did limited work whether you could watch, and then you could come back and finish.
Mostly they watched me and taught me.
There you go. So,
yeah, it was a really instructional kind of...
hands-on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And after a few weeks when they left, we were on our own. And at that time I had 3 boys, 10, 8, and 6. And, of course, my wife... And the rest of the children were pretty small.
Well, yeah, and you homeschool. This is
yes.
But that's the point I want to get to too. Also, as a homeschooling father, but what an education your kids got through this. I imagine. I mean, you talk about every aspect of building, restoring, all that goes into that.
The biggest education your children get is watching you. Mm-hmm. They watched me trust the Lord for the impossible. That changes them as well as me.
So give us an example of what was like really one of those times and you're like, this, I mean, I'm in an impossible situation with this.
That would be most of my life. Well, on a building front.
With your building.
Yeah, on a building front, it would be taking a barn down, moving it, numbering the logs, moving it, transporting it, and putting it back up. You are out of your element, out of your skill, out of everything. Yeah.
So was there any thought of taking that and building something different, or did you was the idea to restore it like it was?
Yes.
Was that the idea?
Yeah, restore it like it was.
Yeah.
But just remember that I was not skilled in this work. And so my message out there to all my fellow believers is that if you're that person that raises your hand that says, I told my friends I was going to build a house and they laughed with hysterics, or I have no gifts and then your wife laughs in hysterics, I was that guy. Yeah. Of course, my wife didn't laugh at me. She actually believed in me, which really helped.
That made a big difference, especially with this. We're talking with Mike Oldman Bailey. I say Mike for his wife's benefit, so she doesn't get mad at me too. But we're certainly talking restoration of 1800s Civil War era. How old is your house? How old was the barn?
The first barn that we built was from about 1860. Mm-hmm. The second barn that we built and live in now is from 1890.
So how did you discover that year? Was it written somewhere? Was it on one of the...
There's a lot of family history floating around. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
Well, we're visiting today with Mike Oldman Bailey here at oldmanbailey.com. You can check it out. We're going to talk about his book here coming up. He's going to stay with us another segment here, and this is going by way too fast, but it's a lot of fun and great to have you in the studio with us. And very interesting. He's restored over 80 1800s structures. 80. Think about that, folks. That's impossible there for most people to even get their arms around or their head around. But we'll talk more with him coming up here on the next segment. We'd love to hear from you, 502-571-0970. Maybe you've been thinking about doing a restoration project, or you've actually done one. Love to hear from you. Text us on the Kentucky's Voice text line, 502-571-0970. And maybe we'll get you guys connected if that works. But anyhow, stay connected with us here on Kentucky's Voice. More to come. Don't go away.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for staying with us today here on Kentucky's Voice. You're listening to this live on 970 WGTK and streaming live across the major social media platforms. And it's great to have with us in the studio today Mike Old Man Bailey. He's had quite a life, we could say, in many different chapters, but we've talked a lot about his current chapter, which is the restorer of homes, and not just any, but the restorer of structures, of barns and cabins and dwellings from the 1800s, and how interesting this is. And what you learn when you're doing this, you have to be affected by the history. I think a lot of our young people need to hear more about. I think they need to learn history in an interesting way. I think sometimes history is just taught as facts and dates, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, people worked for survival. They didn't work for a hobby.
Right. No,
if you didn't plow your garden, you starved.
Right.
If you didn't have shelter that kept you warm in the winter, you froze to death. It's a different way of life. And every pioneer cabin, every barn is different. And it has different origins. It has different styles.
It's so unlike a lot of the building we see today, which is so cookie cutter. It's all the same. But I was looking at some of the pictures on your website, and it's just obvious how unique this is. And so you really learned. You're really self-taught on this. I mean, you've had some folks come in and help you, but you learned it. You learned how to do this.
Yeah, you learn by doing, but I did ask the Lord for wisdom I didn't have and skill with my hands.
And he said he would give it, right? He said he would give
it. It was life-changing.
Now, so what is really great here is, and a lot of people don't do this, they do something, they go through something like this, but they don't record it. They don't journal, and they don't do that. But you've actually put this in a book. And tell us about your book. Hold up a copy. You got a big copy of this book. I love this book. Look at this. It's solid. Old Man Bailey. And it's...
picture of the...
There you go.
10 kids and 25 grandkids on the back.
And then the name, the sub-name of this is Building a New Life by rebuilding pioneer-era cabins and barns. And so, why did you write this book?
Well,
Or put this together?
anybody who's over the age of 65 realize that we have a shelf life. And if we don't pass on the things that God has taught us, we do a disservice to the next generation. I have learned so many valuable lessons in this chapter of my life. One of which is how to help your kids be debt-free when they build their own house. People don't realize that historic structures are everywhere. There's hundreds of thousands of barns. There's many thousands of log cabins.
How many are there? I mean, give us some idea.
Probably
are we talking
in the
about
country, millions.
from the 1800s?
Oh, yeah.
Still, so doesn't that speak to how solid these structures were?
Well, yes, and but the problem is we're losing them, and we have another generation or two to save them. It sounds pretty cool to live in a barn that was made by a pioneer during the Civil War, and it is. Here's what people don't know. You can get these structures almost free. Maybe $3,000 for a barn, maybe $3,000 to $5,000 for a cabin. You have to get your friends and relatives to help you take it down and move it, but the structures are pretty inexpensive. And the truth of the matter is, if a young person will build their home, they'll buy land, collect materials, design their house, and build it themselves, they can be fairly rich in their net worth within short order. My children have all built out of historic materials. Not one of them's over the age of 45, and most of them are debt-free.
Yeah, that's so exciting to hear, and I want people to reach out to you. You'll come and speak. You'll speak at events, and if your organization has an event, you're looking for an interesting speaker and a great speaker, and a speaker that people will not forget what his experience, and he has plenty of stories about these old structures and how he did this. Then you can reach Mike at 502-938-5756. I hope that's okay, me giving that number.
Sure.
Or you can email him at mike@oldmanbailey.com. And if you forget all that, just get on his website, oldmanbailey.com, and you can get the book there. And I would recommend it. It's a treasure, I'm sure. And I read about the book on your site, and it's just really amazing how you can build your home and take an old historic barn or cabin, and you can help America, as you said on your site, save its rich pioneer history.
Amen.
You're really kind of a pioneer with pioneer buildings, those buildings built by pioneers. So,
I just think that the church, the people in the church are too busy, and they don't work on things together. And this is a family project. You build your own house, your family will change forever.
now, let's switch gears for just a moment, because while I have you here, we need to draw on your experience in the political realm. You were a candidate for Congress 4 times.
Yes.
And back...
Won the Republican primary in '92 and in 2000.
In former Representative Lee Hamilton's district, when I lived in that district, as a matter of fact. But you ran some you have to have some advice on this. Now, well, let's first of all, what do you see happening right now politically with Trump? For one thing, there's never a dull moment. I'm not sure that's always good, but there's never a dull moment in this administration. And there's been a lot of excitement in Indiana politics as well. So what do you see happening?
Well, first of all, let me tell you the advice I give my kids. Trust Jesus, buy land, stay out of debt, learn how to grow things.
Nothing about politics.
Yeah, but that is about politics, because we read in Job chapter 12 that God puts people in power. He takes them out of power at his will.
Raises them up.
He raises them up.
Brings them down.
He brings them down. So there's also a funny passage about how he makes drunken men, or the political leaders, like drunken men, which they stagger around. Yeah. My faith has never been in politics, but in Christ alone. Yeah. And the church mission has never changed. That is to be ambassadors for Christ, to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. However, we need to stand up for the right. We need to voice our concern. We need to vote. We need to be involved. And in today's political climate, I've actually never seen in my lifetime so many encouraging things. And on the other hand, we're getting close to $40 trillion national debt.
Which our senator here, Rand Paul, reminds us of frequently and rightfully so.
So we can't survive.
Is it possible to be a spirit-filled Christian with the right motivations and be a successful politician?
Oh, yes. I mean, there are plenty of examples in Scripture.
What about examples now? Do we have them?
Well, when I ran, I didn't hide my faith. I was unique to that time. You know, if you went to our campaign rallies then, you thought you were at a church tent revival meeting.
Did that help you?
I didn't care. Yeah, my trust was in the Lord, not in people. I didn't care about public opinion. You know, I never have. And I think it's important, especially like our Speaker of the House, who has a deep commitment to Jesus Christ and the truth of the Bible, and many others in our government on the executive branch who are openly Christian. But just because we're Christians, we also can make mistakes. So humility is an important character trait, meaning that we need to pray that God would fill us with wisdom, that God would fill our leaders with wisdom, for His plan and for His glory to be worked out in our nation.
So advice for young people now would be you can build your home debt-free.
Or close to it.
Or close to it. And without that mortgage and without that debt hanging over you, what a difference that can make.
Oh, wow.
And then, is there a spiritual message here too, though, for Christians in America? As you restore these places, and you've done it many times now, do you see that? Do you say, hey, this is like what can happen in our lives? Maybe you've gotten off track. Maybe people listening to this show, maybe somebody's gotten off track, but there can be restoration. Maybe they've been torn down. Maybe they've been left by the side of the road.
Simply the message of the gospel, restoration. But I would say this, that in your heart of hearts, every individual has to examine their life. They have to realize that most likely they're too busy and too consumed.
Yeah.
And if you stop, you reflect, you ask the Lord for wisdom, you slow down, and then you trust Him for the impossible. And I mean the impossible. You'll find peace. And that's what Christ has to offer.
You know, this day of social media has not helped us slow down, has it? Because you can't ever get away from work. You know, it's always there, unless you are intentional about it. And that's what you're talking about.
Right. Well, like I have a Facebook account where I give out advice whether you ask for it or not every week. I'm not I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, but I'm planting seeds of truth. And every Christian needs to approach their life. Lord, send me people this day that I can impact for your kingdom.
Yeah. Well, Mike Old Man Bailey, this has been great. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming by.
It's my pleasure.
And folks, you need to get this book. Reach out to Mike at mike@oldmanbailey.com. Or you can go to the website, oldmanbailey.com. And if you forget that, text me. I'll send it to you. I'll make sure you get it. And have Mike out at one of your events to talk about. I'll tell you, it'll be interesting, and you'll go away from there inspired, as I have today. So thank you, and we hope you'll come back and not be a stranger.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, Governor Andy Beshear on The View, and we're going to break down some of the things he said. We've got a preview of what he will say, I think, as he runs for president, and what he won't say. Stay tuned for that. Coming up next on Kentucky's Voice, our final segment. Don't go away.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for staying with us here today on Kentucky's Voice. Jim Waters in with you, as I am usually on most Tuesdays, and great interview with Michael Mann Bailey. Had a couple of texts come in on our KY Voice text line, which you can reach, by the way, at 502-571-0970. This texter said, the joy of restoration is good for a historical attachment to your community. He said he bought his 1870s sharecropper's house in Eastwood when he was 22, restored it to the period, 1,000 square feet of joy. It looks like a dollhouse. How about that? Another said, I learned restoration by doing it. An older home in a rural area, much better than a subdivision. And I learned a lot 50 years ago from the show, This Old House. So, you know, really, we should never quit learning. This should be an ongoing process here. And so thanks for staying with us today. Kentucky's radical, but I don't want America to know until I get elected, Governor Andy Beshear was on The View yesterday, where we got a preview of what he will and won't say as he runs for president. Let's play that clip, first clip.
People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms. I said, my faith teaches me that all children are children of God. And I didn't want people picking on those kids.
100% agree.
So that's Governor Andy Beshear on The View yesterday, and I was hoping to have David Walls, the executive director of the Family Foundation, on. And Dan, he's having problems with the Zoom link, so I don't know what's going on. But anyhow, so Andy Beshear's faith is what drives him to support the chemical and surgical mutilation of children in the name of gender ideology. That was the message that was included on a TikTok taken from that comment by the liberal TikTok group, which you've probably seen if you're watching this show. And by the way, Andy Bashir does this a lot. Now, he talked about this on that show, but he didn't give the complete story, and that's what happens with him a lot. For example, as my co-host Bob Scott, who's on this show and hosts this show on Thursdays and Fridays, pointed out to me in a text that Bashir fails to tell the whole story here, that the legislature soundly overrode his veto, as they have hundreds of times in the state. And so he's out marketing himself as being a Democrat who could win in a deep red state. But really, he has failed to work with the legislature, and they have overridden him. And largely, pretty much every time that he's vetoed a bill, with some rare few exceptions, they have vetoed those bills. And so you're going to hear more of this, where you're going to hear an incomplete story. In the first part of that interview, the governor talked about how we're setting records for jobs and wages and growth in our economy, and yet the very policies that brought about that growth, like right to work, like lower taxes, like getting rid of our state individual income tax, like we're doing, like Indiana's doing, like states that are growing are doing, he vetoed those. He would have vetoed them. He came out against it. He would love to undo right to work. He would love to stop the individual income tax rates from falling. But that's just a good politician, right? It reminds me of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was opposed to work requirements for welfare recipients until Newt Gingrich got elected back in the mid-'90s, you might remember, and until the contract with America got momentum in our country, and until the legislative body, the Congress, was dominated by folks who felt this way. And Bill Clinton was like, hey, if I want to have something to go out and brag about, I better get on board here. And he did. He took credit for the growth in the economy, for a balanced budget, and on and on and on. Now, it's not that big a deal to me who gets credit, really. I know Republicans don't like that. But let's tell the whole story here. Let's not be hypocritical. Let's not say, I'm going to campaign on the fact that our state has experienced the greatest economic growth in its history while I was governor, and yet I opposed many of the policies that created those opportunities and that growth. So let's be fair and honest here. And I know the legislative leadership in Kentucky grits their teeth, gnashes their teeth when he's doing that, because they're the ones who made the hard decisions. They're the ones who have cut taxes. They're the ones who passed right to work. They're the ones who have fought for a better education system, and they're the ones that should get the credit. But be that as it may, just shows he's a good politician. That's all that means. Now, Bashir on The View, this is a liberal program. They have a token conservative on there, but she didn't speak up and say much to the governor. But let's hear the other clip that we have of him here about ICE and immigration.
Governor, you've called the events that we've been seeing in Minneapolis the bloody Sunday of our generation. President Trump said last week that he was going to take a softer touch on immigration enforcement. But there's no indication his administration is backing down. In fact, they are now trying to remove Liam Ramos and his father, do an expedited removal of that 5-year-old child. But do you expect this crackdown to continue throughout the country? And what is your plan for your state if it comes to Kentucky?
Well, every ICE agent should be withdrawn from every city and every community that they're in. This organization has to be reformed from the top down. Mm-hmm. Secretary Noem needs to be fired, and every agent needs to be retrained. I mean, I was Attorney General in Kentucky, the top law enforcement official. The aggressive actions of ICE you don't see with any other law enforcement group anywhere. Mm-hmm. The idea that you don't need a judicial warrant to storm into the home of an American is just wrong. And we've got to make sure that this organization, in the way that it acts, is going to respect all of our rights. There is a body count of American citizens right now because of the actions of this agency. That should be enough to say we're going to take a pause, we're going to pull everybody back, and we're going to try to get it right.
We hope that happens.
So that's Governor Andy Bashir on The View. a friendly audience. That's basically what he's doing right now. He's not being challenged by the press. He hasn't been challenged by the press here in Kentucky all during COVID. You remember, let's not forget what happened there. Let's not forget how he used his power in unconstitutional ways, in very forceful ways. And yet now he's talking about this, about ICE and about the immigration policies of the Trump administration. Here's what you need to keep in mind is when he talks about ICE agents knocking down the doors of Americans, these are not legal Americans that are being arrested and being deported. They're here illegally. They have broken the law. And what's the best indication that people will break the law in the future if they've broken the law in the past? And so either we're going to enforce the laws or we're not going to enforce the laws. Now, we saw during the Biden administration, the laws regarding immigration were not enforced at all. In fact, there was encouragement by people to flood our country and to come here illegally. And, you know, I have friends who are legal immigrants. I've got a great friend in Bowling Green, owns a small restaurant there. He's a Cambodian. He came here legally at the age of 14, became a legal American citizen, went through that process. And he's the most adamant that we should enforce immigration laws of all my friends. The ones that are here, that have come here as legal immigrants, they're most forceful and most adamant that the laws should be enforced regarding immigration, and that people who are not here legally should be deported. And if they want to come here legally, they've got to go through that process. Well, we do have David Walls, Executive Director of the Family Foundation of Kentucky, on the line. And David, thanks for taking just a few minutes here. We've got just a couple of minutes here at the end of the show, but I wanted to ask you about the governor's comments on The View. Can we play that clip again, Dan, the first clip? Can we play that again?
People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms. I said, my faith teaches me that all children are children of God. And I didn't want people picking on those kids.
100% agree.
Well, David Walls, your thoughts about the governor's comments?
Well, I will tell you, Jim, it really is quite disgusting and shameful to continue to see this line of arguments from our governor. And this is what I have to say. Governor Beshear, your faith might teach you it's okay to mutilate children in the name of evil gender ideology, but biblical Christianity certainly does not. And frankly, we need to be calling him out. He continues to twist scripture in support of his leftist agenda, whether we're talking about his support for the slaughtering of the unborn in the womb to this very issue. And again, just to remind listeners, what are we talking about here? We're talking about legislation that Governor Beshear vetoed to keep children from being mutilated in the name of transgender ideology. It was a just act that the General Assembly took to protect our kids from being mutilated. The governor vetoed that bill, and he has the audacity to claim that essentially his faith is teaching him that it's okay to mutilate children. I don't think that's a faith that most Kentuckians recognize.
That's right. And the worst part of this is by talking about it in these terms, he's really accusing our legislature of doing something unchristian, or wrong, or evil.
Absolutely. No, what the legislature did, and not just our legislature, Jim, as you know, over half the states, and then we just had the United States Supreme Court uphold this last year. It is loving and just to protect the most vulnerable among us, whether that's kids that are being preyed upon by the LGBT agenda, or whether we're talking about the issue of abortion and protecting preborn children in the womb. These are just continue to be ways in which our governor is out of step with Kentucky, and I believe out of step with the nation. But we have an obligation to call him out because we know his record, and we know that he has stood with the radical left against common sense issues to protect children that are in alignment with Christian biblical principles, not in opposition, as he would shamefully try to make people believe on this leftist program, The View.
David Walls, Executive Director of the Family Foundation of Kentucky, will continue to watch us. Thank you for taking a few minutes to give us your insight today. And this off our Kentucky's Voice text line on this issue. Dear Andy, God's children should not be led astray. That's pretty pithy, pretty much to the point. And it's been great to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us here on this Tuesday edition of Kentucky's Voice. You can watch this program on TV this afternoon, Channel 21, 1230, 4 and 8. Join us again tomorrow. Andrew Cooper Ryder will be in this seat at 11 o'clock. Have a great day. God bless.